Hi folks, and welcome to Make Food with Fifi. I'm Fifi and I'm the very proud owner of Serendipity, a multi-award winning cafe, tea room and gift shop in Scotland in Fife. And we get asked by our customers all the time to share some of our favourite recipes from the shop. So that's exactly what this channel is for, to share some amazing recipes, anything from cakes to scones, tray bakes, lunches, homemade soups to evening meals. So if that's something you think you'd be interested in, then please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and of course leave any comments below for any of the recipes or any general baking and cooking questions that you might have. So one of the things that we get asked about all the time is our classic Victoria sponge. It is a British staple for any bakery and it's absolutely perfect every time. Great for having friends over on a Sunday afternoon, maybe even for use as a little birthday cake. And it's just so simple and so easy to make if you follow this perfect step-by-step recipe that I have developed. Now, lots of our customers have tried making Victoria sponge and come in and ask us, why did it go wrong? They've maybe added too much baking powder, they've maybe added too many eggs, they've maybe not balanced out the ingredients. Loads of things can go wrong even with a simple sponge, but with my foolproof recipe, you should be absolutely fine. Now we make about 10 to 15 of these over our 5-day week. So it's a lot of sponges. So they're always perfect every time. So this recipe should definitely stand to you for that. So first things first, we always need to preheat our oven. And for a sponge cake, I always set my oven at 190 degrees. That's for an electric fan assisted oven. If you are Fahrenheit, you're about 370, our gas mark 5. So get that on and get it up to temperature before you start, and I'll let you know everything else that you need. So equipment wise, you need a mixer. You can have a stand mixer like mine or a hand mixer, or if you're super brave you can beat by hand, but I just would not recommend that. You'll be there all day and have a very sore arm. You need a little measurer or just a large tablespoon. You need a spatula and you need 2 lined 8-inch cake tins. So we're going to make a double layer Victoria sponge. For our ingredients, we have equal amounts of self-raising flour, caster sugar and butter. This is a cake butter as opposed to a salted butter. So it's 300 grams evenly of each, and that's a very important tip, to have an even amount of all of your dry ingredients. And you need 6 eggs. Large eggs are probably the best, medium will do fine, but definitely 6 eggs. Then for our filling, we need 200 mils of double cream. We need some raspberries for decoration, some icing sugar for decoration, and we need 200 grams of either raspberry or strawberry jam, whichever you prefer. Personally, I prefer raspberry, but it's completely up to yourself. So this recipe is very simple and straightforward. We only have 4 basic ingredients. Now, as I said, they are equal in measure. And I'm going to give you 3 very important tips to follow for this sponge recipe that I've developed over time that makes it perfect each time. So, because our ingredients are of equal measure, we're going to pour in all of our sugar and all of our butter first. Now, we want to beat these together until it's really light and it's turned from a yellow dark butter colour to almost a pale cream or white sort of consistency, and really light and whippy. It really gets that air into the butter and sugar that'll help your cake rise. So give it a good 5 minutes on the stand mixer, or probably 3 minutes if you're beating it with an electric mixer by hand. But keep checking it, mix it through with your spatula and make sure you're getting all into the mix. And if you think it needs an extra minute, please do give it another minute, because you cannot really beat the butter and sugar together for long enough. So you can see after a good 5 minutes of mixing that it's no longer a yellow buttery colour, it's more of a white, almost moussey like consistency, and that'll give us a good rise to our cakes. That is perfect for your butter and sugar. Now the first tip I gave you was to make sure you had equal measures of flour, butter and sugar. So if, for example, you wanted to use bigger cake tins than what we're using here and you wanted to make it a 400 gram mix, you'd have to always have 400 grams of flour, butter and sugar. So you just multiply your quantity that way all the time. Now the second tip I'm going to give you is about your eggs. For every 50 grams of mixed ingredients you want 1 egg. So we're using 300 grams of everything, therefore it's giving us 6 eggs. That's always an excellent rule of thumb. Never use 4 eggs or 5 eggs or whatever you have in the cupboard. Always make sure it's 6 eggs. It needs to be 1 egg per 50 grams of ingredients. So the third tip I'm going to give you is to put the eggs in 2 at a time. And you're going to put them in with a little bit of your flour, and you're going to give each one a very short, sharp mix. So just maybe 30 or 40 seconds, just enough to beat the egg through. So if you were putting your eggs in 2 by 2 with a bit of flour each time, it stops the eggs from curdling the mixture, which is exactly what you want them to do. So you want to make sure that you're adding them in. And you can just use your spatula just to scrape any flour off the edges there. That might build up. Then our last 2 eggs in with the remaining flour. And that should be everything. There we are. So again, we don't want to overbeat it at this stage. Just a short, sharp mix. Just enough to ensure that your eggs are beaten all the way through. Then the last tip I'm going to give you for making the perfect sponge is a little secret that I'm going to share with you today. I had some customers in the tea room last week, a lovely girl and her daughter, and they were asking about Victoria sponge recipe. They tried to make a Victoria sponge and it expanded in the oven and just went everywhere. And I knew exactly why. I asked straight away had they used baking powder in their mix, and they had. And baking powder can cause your cake to either sink in the middle if you open the door of the oven too soon, or over expand your mix and pour it out of the tin, which sounds like exactly what they did. So this recipe does not require baking powder. We're using our self-raising flour, but we're also going to add my final little tip here. We're going to add about 2 tablespoons of boiling water. So I've just mixed that hot water through the rest of our cake mix, and it does 2 things to help you. Number 1, it loosens your cake mix a little bit and stops it being heavy and too stodgy in your tins. But most importantly, the boiling water naturally activates the raising agent that's already in your self-raising flour, and it starts to help it rise before it even goes into the oven, to avoid having to use baking powder altogether and avoid any expansion disasters out of the tin. So this is now ready to go straight into our tins. We're going to evenly distribute the sponge into the 2 tins. Now, I do this all the time, so I've got a good eye, and I reckon I know exactly how much sponge makes an even sponge. However, don't worry too much about it. If one of your sponges is slightly bigger than the other, you can just put the bigger one on the bottom. But try to give it a good chance and try to make sure that you've got an equal amount of sponge mix in each tin. It just looks nicer at the end to have the 2 sponges the same thickness. Now, there we are. So we're just going to smooth out the mixture into the tins. There we go. And then we're going to pop them into our preheated oven for about 40 minutes. Now I want you to check them after 30 minutes and make sure that they're cooking through without burning on top. If they look like they're getting a little bit brown on top, then you can add a piece of your baking paper across the top of the sponges just to stop them getting too brown on top. But they should be absolutely fine for 40 minutes at 190 degrees. Now I'm going to pop these in the oven, and once they're cooled I'll show you how to finish off the sponge. Now that is our sponge out of the oven and cooled down properly. 2 perfectly even sponge sandwiches. So all we have to now is fill them in the middle and eat it. So we're going to take our 200 mils of double cream and we're going to pop it into our mixer. And we're going to mix it up. Be careful not to over mix the cream. You don't want it to go buttery. It's nice and light and Now, there we have it. Perfectly whipped cream. Nice and light. Now, there is the age-old debate of jam first, cream second, cream first, jam first. What is the proper rules? It's exactly the same with scones. I always say jam on the bottom, cream on top. But it's a matter of preference. However, I'm right. It's jam on the bottom, cream on top. So you just smear your jam across the first sandwich, just however you like. Nice and thick like that. You want to see both layers when you cut through it and get a nice taste of both. Now, the easiest way to put the cream on is not to put it on your jam. It's actually to flip over the other sponge and put it on to the bottom of this sponge. Now you can of course pipe this on if you want to. You can add in some strawberries, some raspberries, but I actually fully believe, as do our customers, that the simplest and most effective way is just to put it on. Nice and liberal. Don't be too fussy with it, just make sure they get a nice slice of both. So, then I'm going to turn over our cream sponge on top. Very simple, very effective. Then we're just going to decorate it on top with some raspberries. Again, you can use strawberries, any fruit you want. You can ice the top of this cake if you like. But I actually think that buttercream and icing ruins a good classic Victoria. So we just like to stack on our raspberries. Just, oh, run away from me. Just like this. And then we're going to take our icing sugar and we're just going to give it a nice dusting to finish, just like that. There's something just so satisfying about dusting it with icing sugar and knowing that it's ready to be eaten. So there you have it, the classic Victoria sponge. Very simple, 4 ingredients for the sponge and 2 for the filling. Something anyone can try at home, try it with the family, try it with the kids. Let me know how you get on. If you have any questions at all about this recipe, please don't hesitate to ask. And as always, if you enjoyed it, please like the video. And of course, if you want to see more videos from us, then subscribe. And if you're in the local area, make sure and pop into Serendipity and try a slice for yourself.